Hi, everyone. Welcome. It's just 6 o'clock now, so we'll give folks a few more minutes to join, and then we can get started with the second meeting of the New Southeast Plan Steering Committee. All right. It's a couple minutes past, so let's get started. We probably have a few more folks trickle in here as we get going, but want to respect all your time, and we've got a full agenda tonight, so I want to get started. So thanks everyone for coming back for the second meeting. I know it's been now a long time since our first meeting, unfortunately. Just to remind you all, my name is Scott Robinson. I am the project manager for the Near Southeast Plan. We also have Libby Adams and Jason Morrison and Cortland Heiser, all from the city here, who are also working on the plan. So you'll see them on the list of attendees here. And thanks again to the council members Cashman, Black, and Sawyer for attending as well. And again, to all of you on the steering committee, we really appreciate your time and your commitment to the Near Southeast area. So with that, let's go ahead and dive in. My mouse over here. So tonight, going to give an update on what we've been doing in the last 2.5 months or so since we last met around the community kickoff and community engagement that we've been doing and what's coming up. Then going to give a brief overview of some existing conditions in the Near Southeast area, to show you some of the other work we've been doing, looking at some of the background data. Talk a little bit about some of the previously adopted plans in the area that this plan will be updating, and then have a discussion about the vision for the Near Southeast area over the next 20 years. So hopefully you all saw the email I sent out last week with some background information and some prompt questions, and then we'll hopefully have a good discussion about that in the latter part of tonight's meeting. So unless anyone has any immediate questions or things they want to bring up, we can dive into this agenda. All right. So like I said, in the last 2.5 months or so since we met at the beginning of June, we have publicly launched the plan. So we're going to give a brief overview of what we have done and what we have coming up. But just to remind you, this I showed you at that first meeting, our goals for this initial round of public engagement, what we're calling the community kickoff. We're trying to understand what the community likes and dislikes about the area, what they would like it to be like in the future, what their sort of vision or goals are for the future of it, identify the major issues in the area that need to be improved or addressed by the plan, talk about the engagement strategy for the plan process itself, make sure that we have buy-in on that, and then provide that education component so people understand what the plan is, what the process is, and how they can participate. So to do that, we're using a series of tools, including an online survey that has been up now for a few weeks and will be up at least through the end of this month. We had the virtual kickoff meeting, I think 3 weeks ago now. That was pretty well attended. I'll talk about that a little more in a minute. We are doing and will continue to do a series of sort of outdoor events, including pop-up events in parks and intercept surveys at locations around the area. Doing some targeted engagement, stakeholder interviews, group meetings, and developing a community navigator program. So I'll talk a little bit more about all of those going into it. But before we do that, I wanted to provide a little summary from our first meeting back in June. If you remember, we did what we call Swot Analysis, where we talked about strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats in near Southeast with all of you. We broke out into those smaller groups to have these discussions. So I just wanted to give you some brief feedback on what we all heard from you, so you can see that we are listening, and this will help inform the plan. So strengths from you all for the near Southeast area, a lot about the location and the proximity to the parks and trails and other natural assets in the area, and a history of affordability, although we'll see in the threats that might be changing as well. Weaknesses, a lot to do with mobility. People found it hard to move around the area. Streets are congested, sidewalks and crossings are difficult or dangerous. Lack of bike lanes, things like that. And then also lack of sort of activity in the commercial and mixed use areas. Opportunities, thankfully a lot of opportunities, that's great. That folks see a lot of opportunity for improvement in the area. Again, a lot focused on those mixed use and commercial corridors and areas, making better use of those and provide better services and better urban design in those areas, and also better connections for various modes, including bikes and pedestrians and things like that. And then threats, again, danger from losing that history of affordability, rising prices, lack of affordability coming into the area, loss of green space or other things with new development, aging infrastructure, and buildings in the area, climate change, obviously a threat everywhere. So that just briefly is the summary of what we heard from you all. So there's a great discussion back in June. We appreciate it. And that's the kind of feedback we're gathering from the rest of the community throughout this community kickoff process. So I mentioned the virtual kickoff meeting we had back on July 20th. On Zoom, we had about 120 people who at one point or another joined the meeting. 110 of those filled out our demographic questions, which is pretty good. So we got pretty good feedback on understanding who was at the meeting. And then if you were at the meeting, you saw we asked a series of questions during the meeting on various topics. And we had about 80 people answering those questions typically, which is pretty good. And so we've gotten some good feedback on that. At the same time, we've had the online survey up on the website that anyone can take at their leisure. So far, we've had about 330 people take that survey. On that survey, you can drop a pin on a map and tell us things you like, don't like, or any ideas you have for improvement. We've had about 670 of those comments dropped, which is great. That's a lot of feedback that we really appreciate. And then we have a whole bunch of other sort of open-ended questions where people can provide additional feedback alongside the multiple choice questions, but just in the other comments where people can provide comments on the longer open-ended question, we've got about another 800 comments. So we've got about 1,500 comments so far that we'll read through and we'll incorporate into defining those issues, creating the community vision, identifying those opportunities to improve. And like I said, we'll keep this open at least through the end of August. So we'll hopefully get quite a few more of these. And if you haven't taken it, I encourage you all to take it, even though you're part of the steering committee. I think it'd be great for you all to take the survey as well. And please tell your friends and neighbors to take it as well. That's on the website, denvergov.org/near Southeast plan. So I wanted to give a brief comparison of who we've heard from in these two engagement opportunities. Like I said, we're doing other stuff, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute, but these are the two biggest ones we've done so far, and wanted to give sort of a brief overview of who we're hearing from and who we're not hearing from. So on the left, you can see the folks who filled out the demographic questions for the virtual kickoff meeting, and on the right, folks who have filled out the demographic questions on the online survey. And so I'll have a few slides here comparing those. So you can see here on both, we've gotten the largest number from Virginia Village, which makes sense because that is the largest neighborhood in the area. And you can see we've gotten some representation from the others, but could probably stand to boost those other neighborhoods a bit as well. Here's the age breakdown. You can see both focusing on sort of middle-aged folks. The online survey is skewing a little bit older, but in both we're sort of short on the younger folks, under 30. And so that's an area where we'd like to get better representation in both. Well, missed our chance on the meeting, but in the survey, we'd like to get more folks or younger folks to be able to take that. And then also on the sort of older end, above 70, it'd be great if we could get more folks there too. In terms of, I see Councilwoman Sawyer has her hand up. Do you have a question, Councilwoman?
Thanks, Scott. I did. Hold on, I can't figure out why my computer camera is not turning on. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, perfect, good enough. So just wondering whether you had done any outreach to, like, for example, GW High School. You know, there are a lot of people who live in this area who attend there, and that might be a good way to get a hold of some of the younger students, but I wasn't sure what outreach you had done, and our office is happy to help with that.
Yeah, great question. And we have done some outreach to GW. We did some in the spring when they were still in class. Because they were still in class, we wanted to get sort of ahead of the other stuff. So we had a sort of brief survey that we got pretty good response from some students in GW, like I said, last spring. So they're not reflected in this. Again, this is just this online survey that we launched in July and meeting we had in July. And then as the students are coming back now, we will try to ramp up some engagement with them again. But you know, with the students out for the summer, we didn't have much opportunity to speak with them. So great question. And yes, we will continue to work on that and would love to follow up with your office on how we can collaborate. Where was I? Race, ethnicity. You can see here on both, it skews white. The area is about 65% white. So we do expect more white folks than any other race, but on both of these, the white community is overrepresented. So we do want to see more participation from folks of other races and ethnicities in the area. In terms of gender, for some reason, both are skewed towards women. Not sure why that is. Sort of interesting, but you know, the area is about 50-50 as you would expect. And maybe that's reflected in more men preferring not to answer. That's that sort of light blue color, the teal color. But that's just sort of interesting. And then this is probably the biggest one where we're seeing the discrepancy. Again, it's about 50-50 renters, owners in near Southeast. And in both the meeting and the survey, we're seeing much more owners than renters, which is typical of these processes. And it's something we're working on. When I talk about the targeted outreach we're doing, a lot of that is focused towards renters. So we're trying to address this. But that's a big area where we want to see improvement. And that sort of ties to this one where we are both skewing a little wealthier in our participants as well. And so often those two groups are, there's overlap there, lower income and renters. And so our outreach to renters will hopefully help improve our income distribution as well in participants. That's a brief overview of who we've heard from in those two events. Like I said, there's two opportunities to participate. We've been doing some in-person park events. So we were at the Virginia Village Library about a week and a half ago for their Denver Days activity. And then we were at National Night Out at Cook Park last week and got a lot of great conversations and interaction with folks. This Friday, we will be at 4 Mile Historic Park early in the day, from sort of late morning to early afternoon. And then late afternoon, we'll be at the Cook Park Rec Center and Pool to meet folks there. And we've got a few other events already scheduled, and we're working on scheduling more all the time. So we'll be at Councilwoman Black's South by Southeast event on August 21st, and also at the Healthy Denver Festival on August 22nd. And so at these events, we have, at some of them, we do what we call an intercept, which is just have a really quick survey to get people sort of aware and interested in the plan, and then try to direct them to the online survey to get more detail. So those are things we can do where we can just grab people for a few minutes. And then a lot of these, we're doing what we call a pop-up event, where we'll have a table set up and we have a more in-depth survey. We have a map out, and people can provide comments on the map and more information about the plan. And we can have more in-depth conversations and get more information with folks at those meetings. So we're doing both of those events or both of those activities at events throughout the community. Like I said, we'll continue doing this at least through the end of the month, and maybe even into early September for this. So other things we're working on, I mentioned the targeted outreach, specifically to renters. So we're reaching out to some of the apartment complexes in the area and trying to work with them to get into those areas and start talking to their tenants. We have a few different options that we can do with those to try to develop relationships and get more involvement from those folks. Also reaching out to a variety of community groups in the area to try to get engagement with them as well. We're also meeting with what we call stakeholders, which are folks from other jurisdictions and other organizations that have an interest in the area. So we've met with folks from Arapahoe County. We're trying to schedule a meeting with folks from Glendale. We've met with Denver Public Schools and RTV, large property owners in the area, and other interested parties, both to inform them about the plan and get some of their feedback about the same questions we're asking the public. We've also done interviews with community members. So you may all remember how you got on the steering committee. You filled out an interest form back early in the year. We had about 130 people fill out that interest form, and obviously only about 20 of you got selected to be on the steering committee. So we had over 100 folks who had expressed interest in the area, had a desire to participate in the plan, but weren't able to be on the steering committee. And so we wanted to make sure that they had an opportunity to participate in the plan, that we reached out to them, because even if they're not on the steering committee, their interest in the area could be a real asset for the plan. So we've had interviews with groups of those folks over the last couple of weeks to answer their questions about the plan and get, again, more feedback on the area, the issues that they want to see addressed and things like that, and encourage them to stay involved throughout the process. And then I mentioned the community navigators. We're working on developing exactly how that will function. That will be led by our consultants, who we are hoping to have on board here in the next couple of weeks. We are finalizing the contract with them. So once they get started, that'll be one of their first tasks, is really fleshing out that community navigator strategy and starting to identify those folks and get them on board. So they will be folks that will work with us throughout the process and serve as sort of liaisons and representatives to specific groups within the area, whether that's a neighborhood or a cultural group or something like that. And they will provide that connection and help shape how we engage with those groups. So again, we're further developing that strategy, and that will get launched here in the next few weeks, hopefully. So that quick overview of what we've done, what we are doing on community engagement. So any questions you have? Also, if you remember back in June, when we were supposed to have that meeting at the very beginning of July, we had sent out the draft engagement strategy. I got comments back from a few of you on that in email, but I don't know if anyone else had been holding on to comments or anything that we're to discuss about the engagement strategy for this meeting. So any questions about what I just discussed or on the engagement strategy from back in June? Jim, I see your hand up.
Just a comment, Scott, you're doing a fabulous job, and thank you.
Thanks, Jim. That's great. Anyone else? You can use the raise hand feature, or you can just jump in, unmute yourself, and jump in if you have any comments you'd like to provide or questions you'd like to ask. Judy, I see your hand is up.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that the comments and what you had on Indian Creek was not a surprise to me. I think everything was pretty much exactly as what I would expect.
Okay, that's good that we're getting the right feedback there. That's good to hear.
You're welcome.
I do just want to remind everyone, I should have mentioned this at the beginning of the meeting, but this meeting is being recorded, so just keep that in mind. And then also, if you ever want to come back and rewatch this, it'll be up on the website following this meeting. So any other questions or comments on community engagement so far? Okay, not seeing anything else. We can move on to existing conditions. So at the first meeting, I gave you some really basic demographic information. This will be a little more in depth, show you a series of maps. These are all coming from what we call our existing conditions briefing book, which is almost ready to publish. We're hoping to have it up next week. So if any of these maps you want to see more about, they'll be published in a document on the website next week. This presentation will also be on the website next week. So you can look at this or that briefing book. But I'll just run through a few things here. And then again, if you have any questions, you can stop me as we go through this, or we'll pause for questions at the end of this section. So again, really basic stats on the area. It's about 5.5 square miles, about 40,000 people, 20,000 housing units, and about 34,000 jobs within New Southeast. Here you can see the percentage of foreign-born residents in each neighborhood. So you'll see most of them have sort of between 12 and 16%. University Hills North is lower than that, but we do have a decent amount of foreign-born residents in New Southeast, distributed throughout the neighborhoods. Language, between 4 and 10% of residents, depending on the neighborhood, speak English less than well. So these are folks that we'll want to make sure that we're doing appropriate outreach to. We're providing most of our documents in English and Spanish as we further identify which additional languages people speak. We can provide additional outreach in those languages. But here you can see the distribution of that. This one's kind of interesting. So this is population changes between 1970 and 2019, which is the most recent year for which we have data. So you can see Virginia Village and Washington, Virginia Vale, the two most populous neighborhoods. But most of the growth in the area has come in Washington, Virginia Vale. Virginia Village has bounced around a little bit, but is about the same population it was back in 1970, whereas Washington, Virginia Vale has nearly doubled. Goldsmith and Indian Creek have also grown significantly, although from much lower bases. So they're a smaller proportion of the overall neighborhood. And then University Hills has also stayed relatively stable over the last 50 years or so. Council districts, as you all know, we have 3 different council districts. Just want to provide this map so people can see the areas of breakdown. So the pink there, sort of in the middle, is Councilman Cashman. Covering the largest area. He covers about 60% of the near southeast area. And then Councilwoman Sawyer on the north there and Councilwoman Black on the south, each have about 20% of the area. This is a land use map, which again is pretty detailed. So if you want to look at it in more depth, you can check it out on the website once it's available. But you can see the majority of the area is single unit residential. That's the light yellow color that covers most of the middle of the map. That sort of darker yellow or orangish color is multi-unit residential, so quite a bit of multi-unit residential as well. And then you can see the sort of pink and red along the corridors, that's mixed use and commercial. The purple is industrial or industrial mixed use. And then that blue color is sort of public uses, so things like schools and churches and other civic buildings. So you can see the bar or the pie graph on the left, nearly half single unit residential and nearly a quarter multi-unit residential, and then the other uses sort of spread throughout. This is, and again, so this is what is on the ground today, or as of a few years ago. I think this data is from 2016. But that is what exists. The zoning is what is, if the regulations say should exist. So again, the yellow color is residential. That light yellow is the single unit residential. And then there's that sort of orange color. That's multi-unit residential zoning. And then again, red and pink are commercial and mixed use. The purple and the striped is industrial and industrial mixed use. And then the gray on the map is what we call custom zoning or former Chapter 59 zoning. So those are sort of unique zone districts that don't usually fit into one of the other categories that have their own sort of special rules that apply. So again, with a pie chart, you can see the vast majority is residential, and then a good chunk of commercial and a good chunk of open space zoning as well. Here you can see the year that buildings were built based on our assessor's data. So most of it is that green color, which is sort of the middle of the 20th century, the 50s and 60s, when the vast majority of this area was built out. That sort of darker red data color is things we don't have data for, and most of that is parks because there's no buildings on them. And then you can see some of the newer development, like along Colorado Boulevard and along Evans. Indian Creek, you can see, is newer than most of the rest of the area, but a good distribution of, or actually a lack of distribution of ages. The vast majority of it, like I said, in the mid 20th century. And here is the building height map. So that light yellow color, that again is the vast majority of the map, is up to 2 stories. So most of the area is 2 stories or less, which I'm sure you're mostly familiar with these residential areas, and even the commercial areas don't have a lot of tall buildings. You'll see we're on Colorado Station, and I-25 in Colorado is where we have the tallest buildings, that purple color. Anything over 8 stories is there. And then a few buildings up to 5 or 8 stories elsewhere in the area, but really most of the areas that under 2 stories. So that was a lot about sort of what's built there. Now talking more about who lives in the area. This is looking at median income of households by census tract. And so you can see there's a fairly big range between the neighborhoods and even within neighborhoods, ranging between just over $40,000 median income per household to over $100,000 within Virginia Village, there sort of in the middle. So again, a pretty good distribution of incomes throughout the area, varying by neighborhood and census tract. Related to that, here's the poverty rates, which again vary from just over 4% in Indian Creek to that's 25%. Yeah, 25% again in that tract at Colorado and I-25 in Virginia Village. So again, a pretty big distribution, and you can see these maps are sort of inverses of each other. It's that tract at Colorado I-25 and the one in the Northeast that have the lowest incomes and also the highest poverty rates. Cost burden households. This is looking at how much of folks' income they're spending on housing. And if people spend more than 30% of their income on housing, they're considered cost burdened. So we're looking at the percentage of households in each census tract that meet that threshold of cost burden. So again, it matches up with these previous maps. You can see more cost burden folks along the western edge in the northeast corner and along the south in Goldsmith. Now shifting over to mobility. This is looking at how people drive to work and the percentage of residents who make their work trip driving in their car alone. So what we call single occupancy vehicles. And this one, you can, as you might suspect, is somewhat influenced by access to transit. So where we have the lowest percentage is the areas around Colorado Station. We have good access to that transit stop and also the Yale Station stop down at the south there. And then as we get further away from that, we get higher percentage of people driving alone to work. And this data is from 2019. So before the pandemic, but people were still going into the office or going into work most days. Looking at vehicle crashes. So the yellow roads are what are called our high injury network. Those are the streets in Denver that have the highest share of our injury crashes on them. And then the green dots represent crashes, bigger green dots represent more crashes. So you can see most of those crashes are along those major corridors, Colorado, Evans, Leedsdale, Monaco, Quebec. But you can see those smaller green dots scattered throughout. There are crashes throughout these neighborhoods, so lots of opportunities, and lots of need for improved safety, both on the major corridors and within the interiors of the neighborhoods. This is pedestrian collisions. So those were, the previous one was two cars crashing into each other. This is a car hitting a pedestrian. And again, a lot of them concentrated on those high injury network corridors, but also scattered throughout the neighborhoods. This will give us an idea of where we really need to make those safety improvements at intersections in the area. And then similarly, this is bicycle collisions. So cars and bicycles crashing together. Again, a lot on the major corridors, but also scattered throughout the neighborhood. And then transit, looking at our transit routes and transit ridership. And I believe this data comes from pre-pandemic as well. So you can see major transit ridership at, again, the light rail stops, Colorado and Yale, and then major transfer points like along Leedsdale at Monaco and Quebec. And so those are our big transit ridership areas. And then sort of the last category, as you'll get used to, is what we call quality of life infrastructure. So that's dealing with things like parks and landscaping and environment. So this is our park access map. The areas in red are areas within a 10-minute walk of a park, which is about half a mile. And this is based on actual sidewalk data. So this is where you can actually walk to a park. So we have pretty good coverage in the middle of the neighborhood, but you can see sort of on the edges along Colorado and along Evans, areas with less access. You'll see down here in U Hills North, we have the future park on the map, but because that park isn't built yet, we don't actually have the walk shed there. So once this park gets developed in the next couple of years, we will get good coverage there, but still areas where we can see improvement in park access. And that can be addressed both through providing additional park space and also improving connections. So the areas that could be within half a mile of a park if they had better sidewalk connections or trail connections or things like that. So we'll be looking at both sides of that. This is our tree coverage. So you can see the interiors of the neighborhoods have pretty good coverage. It's all those green dots, each one represents a tree. But as you might suspect, and as you might be aware, the corridors have much lower tree coverage. So that's something we can look to improve, better landscaping along our corridors, because that ties into surface temperature. So this map is basically an inverse of the one I just showed you with the tree coverage. These are areas that have high surface temperatures. And again, it's concentrated along those corridors where we just saw that we don't have trees, Colorado, Evans, Leedsdale. A lot of these is driven by parking lots there. Again, without tree coverage, they just absorb heat. And so this is an area that we can see improvement with improved landscaping and other improvements. Judy, you have your hand up.
Yes. I live in an association where we have had rock replacement in a lot of places, which I don't like to see. I would prefer that they go back to grass, but rock, as I understand it, does transmit heat as well. And I know we have considerable amount of rock within my complex here, my own complex. Just
yeah, that's an interesting point that we can look at. Yeah, it's rock would be better than pavement because it is pervious, so it provides some stormwater benefits. But yeah, it does just sort of absorb heat. You don't get the benefit of the vegetation from trees or shrubs or grass that you might get. So that's definitely something to consider.
Thank you.
Thank you. And then I think this is the last map we have. This is our food access map. So the areas in yellow are areas that are considered to have low food access, which means that they are more than half a mile from a full service grocery store and also have higher than average low income residents and higher than average percentage of residents without vehicles. So these are folks who would struggle to get to places where they can buy fresh food, specifically a full service grocery store, which we consider a supermarket, a supercenter, or a warehouse club store like a Costco or Sam's Club. So areas where we need to think about improving access to healthy food, again, both by either providing stores that sell healthy food in these areas or improving access in other ways. Judy, again.
Okay. For me, it's alcohol access within a mile of where I live. We have 3 liquor stores plus King Soopers, which I don't think is very healthy for our neighborhood. Just a comment.
Yeah, that's a good point. We don't really have data on that. That'd be something interesting to look at. I don't think we've looked at the locations of liquor stores in the area. So yeah, good point. Thanks for bringing that up.
One more, just additional. They are all north of Florida.
Okay. Yeah, so they're like along Leedsdale or along Parker, north of Florida.
Actually, there's a big one on Parker, but no, the one is at Mississippi and Quebec.
Yeah.
Another one in the shopping area just across the street, and then another one over by, well, there's King Soopers, and then across from King Soopers on Monaco, I think it's Monaco in Ohio, is another one.
All right, yeah, we'll take a look at that. It's interesting. So like I said, that was the last map. So happy for any thoughts or questions on anything we just presented. Harvey?
Oh, now it works. Can you go back to the slide right before this and point out, I'm confused. where Alameda and Quebec are specifically on here.
Alameda and Quebec would be right here.
Okay. So Alameda, Quebec. So that's the yellow there is, I believe would be, it doesn't look like it, but it looks like it. According to you, that's my neighborhood, which is George Washington or Weston Down area. And you're saying there's a yellow area there. Okay, that's the one that has higher than average. Is that correct?
So that's a low food access area. So it's more than half a mile from
Oh.
a full service grocery store and has higher than average percentage low income residents and higher than average percentage of residents with no vehicles.
I'm not sure that really describes our neighborhood. We have grocery store, walking distance up to Lowry,
Yeah.
which is less than a half a mile along Quebec. We have grocery stores along Leedsdale. I'm not sure how accurate that is.
Yeah, we can take another look at this. I think it's from our Department of Public Health and Environment put this together. So we can take a look at it and
Yeah, I just thought I'd bring that one up. Okay.
yeah, that's great to
Yeah, and I was kind of confused on some of the others too because they didn't have street names, so I was trying to make sure what area we're talking about.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, if there's any you want to go back to, I'm happy to go back and
These are on the site.
yeah, they'll be up next week.
Okay, I can go there and kind of look them over. That's
Yeah,
fine.
certainly. And if you have
Okay.
questions after you look at them next week, let us know and we're happy to provide any
Okay.
more information.
All right, thank you.
Yep, thanks. Lisa.
So the area exactly to the south of what Harvey was just talking about, it does seem like that is the area where there is the grocery store, smaller King Soopers, but still a full service grocery store at Monaco and Mississippi, basically.
Yeah.
And so I'm kind of confused about that yellow area, except that I do know that it's mostly a multifamily area and a lot of apartments there. So it might be a lower income area and maybe fewer people with a car, but certainly many of that is definitely within a half a mile of a grocery store.
Yeah, so the King Soopers is this sort of green dot right here.
That's the
Yeah.
King Soopers?
Yes. Right.
Okay,
This is
I see what you're
Leedsdale
saying.
here.
Oh, okay.
This is
I got confused. I thought it was, I didn't see that. Okay, sorry. Never
Yep, that's
mind.
fine. It's good to check these things. Yeah, sorry, these don't have street labels on them. So yeah, this is Monaco, Quebec,
Yeah,
Alameda, Leedsdale, Cherry Creek, Evans, Colorado. So this is Mississippi. This is Florida through here. Dahlia. Spencer.
Yeah, just chiming in with everyone else. I know in the lower left portion too, there's now a Target just south of I live.
Yes, that is a good point. That would not be reflecting this map because that just opened. So yeah, we have the King Soopers just south of that down here. Yeah, the Target right here is not on this map yet. So that's a good point. Harvey.
I thought you'd automatically lower my hand. I took care
Oh,
of it.
sorry.
Thank you.
Yeah, it'd be great if you can do it. We can do it if you're having trouble with it. What do you think?
I think it's just as a clarification. I don't think it's just with regards to proximity. I think it's also, if you read the note, it indicates that it's those with higher than average percentage of low income residents. So it's satisfying multiple categories.
Yep.
So it's not just with regards to proximity that this map has been created.
Yeah, great point. That's exactly right. Great. Any other questions or comments on this map or any other maps or charts I showed over the last few minutes? Yeah, go ahead again.
Yeah, sorry. Could we go back to the previous map? I was just blown away with that temperature.
Yep.
So if I'm reading this correctly, what we're really kind of seeing is parking lots that are providing a majority of the increased temperature.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing is parking lots and large roof areas.
Perfect. Okay, thank you. I just was, like I said, I was just a little bit astonished by it.
Anything else? Yeah, Erica.
So to understand again about the food, the next slide, would the yellow areas then be areas that the city can encourage businesses to come and put a grocery store or put other food services? Or does the city have that kind of persuasion to say that to businesses or to request it? How does that work?
Yeah, good question. We will, and that's something we'll be looking at different strategies as part of this plan and identifying the best ones. We have somewhat limited ability to attract grocery stores. The biggest tool the city has is tax breaks, tax rebates, but because most food isn't taxed, you don't pay sales tax on it. There's not a big tax benefit for a rebate. So we have other tools that we can use to encourage either grocery stores or smaller fresh food providers, or find other ways of providing other forms of fresh food. Sometimes it's not a permanent store, but we'll encourage whether it's a farmer's market or a fresh food truck or something like that, to provide areas. Encourage community gardens so people can grow their own food. And then, like I said, also, providing additional access. So it's areas where, maybe it's not putting a grocery store in there, but if we can improve people's access to the existing grocery stores, whether that's, making better pedestrian connections or improving bus service to existing grocery stores or things like that. So yeah, there'll be a variety of tools that we'll look at to try to address these areas and improve food access.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Yeah, like I said, this will be, Judy, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm looking at the area, the yellow area that you got across from Indian Creek here. That largest part of that area is where Place Middle School is.
Right.
And then, trying to get a view here of this. That's all, the other part of it is all residential, pretty much. So I guess I'm confused. Where that is less than a mile from a grocery store.
Yeah, and the measure is half a mile. Yeah, so it's areas that are more than half a mile from a grocery store, and then meet these other criteria of higher percentage of lower income residents and higher percentage of residents without a car.
Right, because at Leetsdale and Quebec, we have a shopping center with a large grocery store in it. And then we have the one at Monaco and
Yep.
Leetsdale, which is King Soopers.
What is it at Leetsdale in Quebec? Because that's not showing up on our map.
Well, there's a shopping center there, and there is a Stop and something. It's a huge grocery store. It's in that shopping center. It opened up, Safeway was there, and then this opened up. I think it's been there now for almost 2 years.
Okay.
It may have been closed in 2019. I think it was empty for quite some time.
But it's open again, isn't it? Isn't there a grocery store there now?
I think that this data is from 2019 though.
Right. So that could be the issue, that we don't have, we clearly don't have that on the map, right? The grocery stores are these green dots, and so we don't have a green dot there. So
It's a save a lot. It's a,
that's
you know,
it.
it's a save a lot. And I haven't been in there, but it does seem like it's a full service grocery store.
yeah, so it either could be because this is from before that opened, or it could be for some reason we're not counting a Save a Lot as a full service grocery store, which maybe it is. Again, we didn't make this or make these determinations. This came from another department, so we can look a little more at the data in this and try to understand, whether
So
it was. Yeah.
Is it a little misleading though, as Judy had mentioned, to have areas in yellow, the large area for Place Middle School? It does kind of skew the map. And I'm not sure what other of these big areas that don't look like they have streets, in the Goldsmith area, that don't have, delineated kind of subdivision lines or cul-de-sac streets. I'm sorry that it's not overlaying something that I know exactly what that is, but I do think it is misleading to have big plots of property like Place Middle School in this, talking about supermarket access and low income areas.
Yeah, that's a fair point. That we're looking at residence access, and if nobody lives there.
Right.
Thank you.
Yeah, like I said, we'll take another look at this map. You brought up a lot of good points, and we'll try to get a better understanding of the data from our public health department.
I also think there's a specialty grocery store that was off of Oneida there near Leedsdale as well. There's a little shopping area there with the drugstore, and there used to be a specialty food store in there too.
Yeah, and again, that one might not qualify as a full service grocery store.
Right.
Yeah, the M&I International Market, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that one might not qualify as a full service grocery store. But again, that's where as we dive more into this, we can understand what the actual offerings are in different areas. So maybe it may not qualify as a full service grocery store, but it provides fresh food that may be serving that area just as well as a full service grocery store does. So, Harvey.
I don't mean to beat the dead horse because I think I am, but back up to that Alameda and Quebec area where it's yellow. Does yellow have to meet all three of the criteria? No grocery store, low income, and no cars? Does it have to meet all three?
Yes, yeah. That yellow means it's meeting all three of those criteria.
Okay, so I would definitely say the one up in the corner there at Alameda and Quebec, it definitely doesn't meet all three of those. There's definitely not low income, pocket of low income, and from our surveys of the homes there, everybody has a car. So I don't know what criteria went into this, but I think this map is kind of bogus.
Okay. Yeah, like I said, we'll take a look at it.
And thank you for the opportunity of letting me say so.
Yeah, no, definitely. Thanks for all your feedback on it. It's good to get a reality check on some of these things. You guys are much more familiar with the area than we are. We're learning about it still. So we see these maps and say, oh, it seems to make sense. And then you guys who actually live there and know all these places really well, you can give us that reality check. So I appreciate it. All right, like I said, these maps will be up on the website with a whole bunch more. The briefing book's about 100 pages long. So there's a whole bunch of data in there for you to look at. That'll be up on the website next week. If you have any questions about anything, if like this, you see one of those maps and you say, this doesn't make any sense, or this doesn't reflect how I know my neighborhood, please let us know and we can answer any questions or take more detailed looks at anything. All right, so moving on to previously adopted plans. So there's some existing area or neighborhood plans that cover parts of near Southeast. Those plans that are adopted as supplements to the comprehensive plan will be replaced by this near Southeast area plan. So when the near Southeast plan is adopted, it gets adopted as a supplement to the comprehensive plan, which again is the city's overall plan. And as part of that, it will replace or partially replace for plans that extend outside the area, those previously adopted plans that are supplements to the comprehensive plan. So we'll be losing those plans. So to make sure that we're not losing anything important, we are reviewing those older plans and we'll pull out relevant recommendations and they'll be incorporated into this process. They can be updated as necessary or modified to reflect current situations, but then they'll be incorporated into this new plan. So if there are good recommendations from a previous existing plan and you want to make sure don't get lost, let us know about those and we can incorporate those into the planning process so that they're still included. Yes, Harvey.
If an area has a conservation overlay at this point, I think that's what it's called. Will this replace it or how does that affect the overlay?
No, so this won't affect the overlay. The conservation overlay, like all overlays, is part of the zoning code. So the plan won't impact the zoning code. You can make recommendations for future changes to the zoning code, but those will have to be then developed through an additional process after the plan. And again, adopted or approved separately by city council. So, I think there are a couple areas that have a conservation overlay in the city or in this near Southeast. And that's one of the maps we have in the larger briefing book. So you can take a look at that map when we get that up on the website next week. And so, if there are issues with those conservation overlays, we can make recommendations for modifying them to address those. If there are areas that we identify that need a conservation overlay, the plan can make recommendations to implement a conservation overlay in additional areas. But those will all happen after the adoption of the plan. And there'll be more process for developing those and implementing those. So this only addresses the plans, which are, again, the policy documents, not the zoning code. The plan won't directly impact the zoning code, but it will replace previously adopted policy documents like the plans, which I'll touch on briefly here. So first one to talk about is the Colorado Boulevard plan, which is from 1991. So it's about 30 years old now. And it covers Colorado Boulevard between First Avenue on the north and Iliff Avenue on the south, and really focuses on the street and the properties immediately on Colorado along that corridor. So it covers a lot of Colorado Boulevard in our area, not all of it. Colorado extends a little south of this plan area, and this Colorado Boulevard plan extends a little north of our plan area, and obviously only covers the eastern half. The western half of Colorado will be in a different plan. So when this plan was adopted in the early 90s, the main focus was on the traffic and congestion along Colorado Boulevard and trying to find ways to address that. A lot of the recommendations were about expanding intersections, widening intersections, which is something the city has gone away from in the last 30 years. We're not looking at widening any streets, we're looking at finding other ways to improve mobility. And so this is an area where a lot of the recommendations are sort of out of date with the city's broader policy goals in mobility, although there are still a few relevant things. We do still want to somewhat limit displacement. We don't want people speeding through the nearby neighborhoods. And that is unsafe and dangerous for those neighborhoods. And then it also includes some urban design recommendations to try to create consistency. Again, some of those are a little out of date, where design thinking was 30 years ago, but a lot of the intent is still there to create a better urban design corridor, better looking buildings, better relationship to the street, and things like that, better landscaping, certainly. So that's the Colorado Boulevard plan. We also have the Colorado Station Area Framework Plan, which covers the area just south of Colorado Station. So where Freeway Ford is, the RTD parking lot, the self-storage, everything sort of between Colorado and I-25, south of the light rail line and north of Evans. You can see in that little graphic there. So this was done in 2003 before the southeast line opened and Colorado Station opened. So I was looking at how this area should develop. Mostly concerned with creating enough activity there to support the ridership at the station. This one hasn't seen a lot of implementation. Most of what is there was there 20 years ago, is still there. Again, the car dealership, the self-storage, there's been a little bit of redevelopment. And then of course the parking lot, RTD parking lot went in. So this one still has room for sort of implementation. We'll take some of the goals of this and look at how we can help implement that to get appropriate development there along the north side of Evans and south of the station as some of these properties potentially redevelop in the next 20 years. Yeah, Judy.
For my area, we use the 9 Mile station because it basically is 10 minutes and much easier to get to than to try to get to the Colorado Boulevard station and the Yale station, because the Yale station doesn't have enough parking. I know this because I go to the theater during the winter time and we take the light rail into the theater complex, mainly because it was taking some of us 2 hours to get down to the theater and it just didn't make any sense to continue to do that. But we don't have good light rail access where I live, so which is unfortunate.
Yeah, right. So you just go down Parker to 9 Mile. That's easier for you.
Exactly. It's about a 10-minute drive.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's right. These are both sort of concentrated on the southwest portion of the area, so not everywhere in near southeast has good access to these two stations. So certainly looking at how we can improve transit access throughout the area, not just getting people to these two stops.
My 2 cents worth is when they shut down the capability of having Spear Boulevard continue out southeast on either side of Cherry Creek. That's why we wound up out here with Cherry Creek North and Cherry Creek South. And that was unfortunate when that was development came in and they took it away.
Yeah.
It definitely was an access route that would have been good for light rail, future light rail. Just a comment.
Yep, thanks. Lisa.
Actually, I would comment that there's not enough parking either at Colorado Center or at Yale. I, unlike Judy, I would usually drove to Yale because I could more inobtrusively park in the neighborhood, which I'm sure made me very popular. I do remember one time I tried to do a combination of taking an RTD bus, which is actually within walking distance of my house, Florida, during rush hour to get to a light rail station, and I was routed to the DU station. So there was no place that I could walk about a quarter of a mile to a bus to get to a station that was in close proximity, the closer proximity.
Right.
And it was about, the trip would have taken over an hour, where I actually could have just gotten on the bus and gotten downtown a lot quicker. So all of those things really need to be worked into our plan to really enhance our connectability to the, being such a small area, 5 square miles, and having 2 transit areas that are underserved by parking and last mile access, I think, are a big problem.
Yeah, definitely. Libby.
I just want to make sure I understand this map. Does this also reflect the bridge that has been built over the I-25 corridor? And if so, are there also looking at potential rezoning of the areas immediately north exactly of your cursor that currently has, I believe, multifamily in that location, but I didn't know if they're going to also increase any height opportunities there to possibly take advantage of that kind of that RTD connection.
So that is something we can talk about as part of this plan, the Near Southeast plan. The Colorado Station Framework Plan from 2003 just looked at this area in red south of the station for the most part for development. It did talk about connections, and one of the things it did recommend was a pedestrian bridge over I-25, which took 15 years or whatever to get built.
Sure. But I was just understanding that this is part of our recommendations, but I just wanted to double check to see if there's anything already in the works for that, or okay, no. So that's where the conversation starts with us.
Yes, right.
Okay.
Yes,
perfect.
we can look at whether it's appropriate to try to encourage more density in that area just across the pedestrian bridge or anywhere else
Okay,
around here.
Thank you.
Yep. Spencer.
Just piggybacking off that comment, there's already a large development going just south of the Colorado Station.
Yeah.
Like housing, multi-use, quite a bit.
There's the Deco, which got built over here. And then there's the Cameron development, which is coming in over here, currently under construction. So yeah, we're already seeing some development south of Evans, which I think we need. One of the reasons we wanted to include this area in the plan was that we're starting to see a lot of redevelopment on the south side of Evans, and we don't have good direction for there. We're not seeing redevelopment on the north side of Evans, where we actually do have a plan calling for changes there. So we'll take a broader look at the entire area, south of Evans, north of I-25, Colorado Center itself, although it is approaching build out, and this area. Judy, did you have more, or you just still have your hand up? Okay. All right. That's the Colorado Station Area Framework Plan. Next is the Cherry Creek Greenway Master Plan. So it's really looking at the Cherry Creek Greenway plan from 2000. Covers basically from the dam to University Boulevard. So the whole Greenway through this southeast part of town. And it, like I said, is really looking at the Greenway improvements to the open space and the parks and the green space along the creek and the path there. Also talking about improvements to connections to the path and the open space there. So this still has some good recommendations for improving the Greenway and improving those connections that we'll be looking at advancing through this plan as well. And then we have the Yale Station Area Study, which is not an adopted plan. It was just a study. So just sort of looked at different options and different potentials for the Yale Station area. Again, before the southeast line opened. This was also done in 2003. So it sort of just looked at what was there and how redevelopment there could proceed. And we have seen some redevelopment there in the last 20 years. So some of the things explored in this study have happened, but it hasn't built out exactly how this study looked at. So there's still some ideas in there that we can look at. And then some of you may be aware that Virginia Village actually had a neighborhood plan that was done back in the 1970s. It is so nearly 50 years old now. It is not considered an adopted plan. When we adopted the new Comprehensive Plan 2000 back in the year 2000, the Virginia Village Neighborhood Plan, which was 27 years old at that point, was not readopted as a supplement to that plan. So it has not been an adopted plan for the city for the last 21 years. And like I said, nearly 50 years old now. It is only about 10 pages long. So it doesn't provide a lot of detail. And a lot of what it does say is fairly out of date. Although some of the stuff it recommends are sort of general improvements of making the area more livable. But again, that's not technically an adopted plan, and considering its age, we won't be spending too much time on it. But just wanted to acknowledge that we do know that it exists, and I have read through it. So those are the plans within the near southeast area, and then there are plans around the edge that have influence that we also want to make sure that we're paying attention to. So a couple of those are city plans. The Lowry Use Plan covers Lowry to the northeast of the area. And then the University Park Neighborhood Plan covers University Park across Colorado from University Hills on the southwest. So we've looked at those plans and looked at their recommendations for connections into the near southeast and how to treat the edges of their neighborhoods. And then we also have plans from other jurisdictions. So Arapahoe County has what's called 4 square mile area plan. That covers the area basically around Indian Creek that's in unincorporated Arapahoe County. And then they also have their larger comprehensive plan, which covers that area, although it mostly defers to the 4 square mile area plan for 4 square mile area. It also covers the area, the 2 enclaves on the south side within Goldsmith and University Hills. So we've looked through those plans, and then there's also the Glendale Comprehensive Plan. It's planned for development, of course, and how that interacts with the northwest portion of the area. So we reviewed all those plans. Like I said, we're working with these other jurisdictions to find ways to collaborate and coordinate our planning efforts. So those are the neighborhood plans that we are taking into consideration. Does anyone have thoughts or questions on those? Judy.
There is building going on right now, and 120 units that are going in off the Quebec Way. And then I was north or south of here today, where there is a large area just south of Cherry Creek South, which is being cleared, obviously, for another development, plus the huge development that is going on between Yosemite and, well, not quite to Quebec, but it's a pretty huge area in there where they're developing all of that area. I know there was a traffic study, Scott, that was done for this southeast area. Are you aware of that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we've talked to our transportation folks about that as well.
Right, good. Okay, because I know that was recently completed. I know we're going to see a lot more traffic out here as a result. This other one, this other big complex just south of the park hasn't been started yet, but that's in planning stages. I mean, he knows what he's going to build, but it's got the access is not a good access to that property.
Yeah, and those are in Arapahoe County, the ones you're mentioning.
Yeah, all 3 of them are unincorporated.
Right, yeah.
Arapahoe County. Yeah.
Yeah. We've, like I said, we met with the planners from Arapahoe County, so we've gotten some insight into those developments as well. So yeah, we're aware of those and keeping track of them.
Now there's going to be pretty good sized traffic impact out here when they're completed.
Yep.
Okay,
Yep. All
Thank
the
you.
more reason to do a plan.
there you go. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman Sawyer.
Thanks, Scott. Just wanted to touch base too, for the same reason, right? So on the far northwest side of the plan area, kind of at Leetsdale and Holly, there are like 600 units going in between two different developments, one on the north side of Leetsdale, one on the south side of Leetsdale, right at Holly. And then there's another rezoning. Poor Jason had to listen to me yesterday in committee, grill him about it. But I think also that should, if it's not being tracked, because the one on the north side is in the LDR process right now, and because it's more than 5 acres, and there's going to be some significant traffic impacts to that area.
Yeah, definitely. Right. We are tracking the one, well, all of those. So the one north of Leetsdale that went through LDR, the one south at Holly, and then the church there at Parker and Mississippi, basically. Right?
Yeah, that one is, I think that's outside the plan area. I'm talking to the west. Yeah, yep. I'm talking to the far west. So
right.
Leetsdale, Holly.
Okay. Yeah, right. We are aware of all of those as well. And keeping track. Any other thoughts or questions on previous plans? Okay, great. So that gives us plenty of time for the visioning discussion, which will hopefully be a little more engaging and interesting for you all instead of just listening to me talk for the last hour and 15 minutes or so. The plan vision is something that will be sort of one of the first things we'll decide on as a steering committee. We'll take this first round of engagement, and one of the things we'll come out of that with is a draft vision statement. It sets the overall goal for the plan, and every recommendation in the plan needs to support and further that vision, be consistent with it, right? So this will be the high level goal, and then everything that we do within the plan should be advancing that. It also needs to be consistent with already adopted citywide policies, mostly the ones identified in Comprehensive Plan 2040 and Blueprint Denver. So if you remember the presentation of the last meeting, I went through some of those high-level goals from those plans that will need to be advancing in this plan. So the vision for this plan needs to be consistent with those. And like I said, it will be based on, in large part, the community and what we receive in this first round of engagement. So I sent you all, as an example, the vision from the far northeast area plan, which was the first of these NPI plans we did, adopted 2 years ago, covering the neighborhoods of Montbello, Green Valley Ranch, and DIA up in the northeast part of town. So it's really 6 vision statements, right? It's broken down by these 6 categories, 6 vision elements that come from the comprehensive plan. So if you've looked at the comprehensive plan, it has these 6 vision elements, and all the recommendations in the comp plan are divided into these. When we started working on these NPI plans, we thought we were going to organize the NPI plans under these same 6 vision elements. What we've shifted to more is the categories under Blueprint Denver, which are land use and built form, housing and economy, mobility, and that quality of life infrastructure bucket. So that's probably where we'll go with, that is where we'll go with the organization of this plan. Probably makes sense to go that direction with the organization of vision statement or statements. But we can figure out exactly what makes sense for this area as we have more discussions about this and start to actually put together a vision statement. But so the Far Northeast plan, like I said, has sort of a few sentences under each of these categories saying how the residents of the area want to see their neighborhood evolve over the next 20 years, what they want it to look like in 2040. in terms of each of these broad categories. So I won't read these. Like I said, I sent this to you last week and have it up here on the board just for reference. But what we want to talk about is the prompt questions that I sent you in that email as well. So think about what you would be like, or what your area would be like in 2040. So imagine you're still living in your neighborhood in 2040, and in your ideal vision, what does that look like? What's the community like? Who's there? How do people interact? How do people work together, live together? What are the housing options in the area? What businesses are there? What are the parks and other recreational opportunities like? What other amenities are there that serve the community? How are you moving around the community? How do you get to work? How do you get to the grocery store? How do you get to anywhere else you might want to go? And what's the environment like? How is nature incorporated? How have things evolved in that direction? So broadly, what if you could have your ideal version of near Southeast in 20 years? What would be there, and what would it look like? So it's a pretty open-ended question. Hope we can have a good discussion. Again, at this point, there are really no wrong answers. It'd be good if you could keep in the back of your mind those sort of high-level policies from Blueprint and the comp plan that we want to be consistent with. But really, at this point, sort of anything goes. So I don't know if anyone wants to start off with if they had any thoughts over the last week on their vision for near Southeast.
Scott, it's Cashman.
Yeah.
You know, the thing that stuck with me from the first meeting was the idea of placemaking and the lack of cultural centers and cultural opportunities. And, you know, the variety of housing options is one thing, but that general area is what really rang out for me. You know, the area is so bounded by major thoroughfares that I just heard that call for more stuff within the community. So that's what I wanted to offer.
Yeah, that's great. Any specifics on, I mean, again, this is a high level conversation, but if there's anything you can think of specifically that helps us sort of ground these in reality.
Oh, yeah, and what comes to my mind are, you know, any variety of cultural venues. I mean, you know, artistic studios, performance venues, you know, anything of that sort. Places for people to go and hang out that aren't parks necessarily, but yeah, I think that's pretty much it.
Great. That's helpful. Thanks. Eric, want to go?
So I was imagining a very pedestrian and bike friendly community with retail, food services, and activities that give a distinct character and appeal to our neighborhood, with, you know, tree lined streets that are well tended and clean and neat sidewalks. I also was thinking it would be great to have smaller community gathering spaces. One idea that came to mind is I've been to Austin, Texas fairly recently, and they have all these little food truck areas that, you know, it'll be kind of almost in a small parking lot area, small, intimate, and it has, you know, picnic tables in the middle, and they park there pretty much consistently. And there's a lot of community gathering at these places, even far out, not just directly in the city. So something like that would be really cool. And I also thought more towards the environment, you know, planning for the future, you know, electric car charging stations, maybe with some retail around that, or restaurants. Yeah, I think that's mainly what I had. And non-chains. I was really hoping we can really encourage smaller restaurants, smaller single-owned businesses to come to our area.
That was great, especially that first part. It seemed like you practically wrote it for us, that we could just take that and go.
I wrote it.
Yeah, that was really good.
Thank you.
Yeah, all of those are great things. Judy.
I think out here in Indian Creek, we have a large number of empty nesters here and retired people. And I know this year during COVID, our park really got a lot of use. The area of Cherry Creek, they have just been working on and redoing that area, and access to that area from Indian Creek, other than walking along Quebec on the sidewalk, I don't know what other kind of access there will be from the interior of Cherry Creek to that new area. But I do know that the area that's going to be developed immediately south of the park is going to be for retirement people. And there will be housing there for people that are retired or have people that are in the assisted living or facility that is going to be there, built there in conjunction with it. So I think access to some of these green spaces, other than having to walk along a very busy street, would be something that might be considered for the future.
Yeah, definitely. Lisa.
Well, when I thought about our neighborhood, and especially when I saw the maps, the heat map, that appalling heat map, and the heat that is generated along Evans and Leetsdale. Evans and Leetsdale are kind of, in a way, like our central business district in this area, and they're really not walkable. They're very uncomfortable to walk along, and so we have decent enough bus access. But I guess if I were to envision something, I'd love to see trolley cars along Leetsdale and along Evans, and just a more intimate, and I don't mean it, they have to run the whole length, but a more intimate, a way to get around from one side to the other.
That's great. I love that. Thinking big. That's perfect. Lupe.
I think on what I've seen done successfully, at least in areas that have previously been very much a kind of a urban, where something like Rhino, where now Denver is implementing the need to have a buffer in between the road and the sidewalks themselves. Right, it increased to about 13. I think it's 13 feet, where then you have a pedestrian area plus a green space. I would love to see any future developments that go along both Evans as well as even Colorado, if even possible. But some of our major thoroughfares, as what was once mentioned, being a little bit more pedestrian friendly and incorporate that buffer to provide that sense of safety, and hopefully begin to also slow traffic down slightly. The other aspect that I've always been very envious of, and to be perfectly honest, is Monaco, north of 6th, has this immediate sense of a place, both due to the mature trees that grow on its edges, as well as the fact that it has a larger kind of a green space in between. Obviously, this is a huge ask, but it'd be great if we can start incorporating this idea of having that median buffer on some of those larger thoroughfares as well, in hopes of actually creating that sense of space that would hopefully kind of add a little bit more frontage opportunities for future developments along those major corridors.
Yeah, that's great. Spencer.
if I remember viewing that map earlier when it was talking about zoning, did I see that properly, that there was absolutely zero entertainment zoning in the entire area?
We don't have a specific entertainment zone district really. That typically falls under a mixed use zone district.
Okay. I mean, one of the things I remember from the first meeting was that there doesn't seem to be anything that really draws anybody here. When I talk to my friends that live elsewhere, you know, Rhino, Lodo, Lohi, even like over by DU, you know, there's something that draws, you know, DU now, besides the university, they've also got that really nice Denver beer coat that just opened up. You know, one thing that I've been surprised about since I moved to Denver from Austin, Texas, was the strong music scene that's here. And we have a really strong industrial corridor here that could easily support some new venue, some kind of encouragement. I mean, the new Kmart parking lot, or the Kmart parking lot on Monaco and Evans that's being renovated. Just an idea on something to, you know, draw people here. Denver loves its music, be it a country venue like the Grizzly Rose, be it Mission Ballroom and Rhino. It's just an idea that, you know, things spread out. In Austin, you know, you've got the main music venues downtown, but you also have a few music venues that branch off. There's a few that are in they're closer to residential. They're still far enough away that the residents don't seem to care. But again, just an idea in regards to encouraging something that might draw people to this area. In addition, one thing I would like to see, I know when Virginia Village was being built, the developers were required to plant one large tree on each property. And I think that's kind of a neat idea to enforce on future zoning, be it mixed use, single use, whatever. Just trees, mature trees being planted and maintained to ensure that they actually hit their full potential, because I know sometimes people just throw them down, kill them, move on with life.
Yeah, no, that's great. It's a great suggestion. Both of those are great suggestions.
And the one I'm probably going to die on a hill on this entire thing is a dog park. We need a dog park somewhere down here.
Good. Jared.
I'm going to defer to Jim.
Let's turn
he's
the
on
waste
camera.
transfer station into a dog park. I just wanted to say that I think you've got a lot to work with here. You've got two terrific parks, two of the best, Cook Park, Bible Park. You've got a neighborhood that's stable. People are improving their homes, not letting them go. We are located between two major bike paths, the path to the north, the Cherry Creek Trail, and of course the other path to the east and the south, the Highline Canal Trail. You've got a lot of good stuff going here. People feel safe walking around. I've lived within this area for 44 years. The new people that are moving in, the new families, the young couples having new kids feel safe. It's good for them to walk around. People walk at all times of day and night. I think if we can continue that, we'll accomplish a lot, because there's a lot to be said for this area, always has been, and no reason that there should not be in the near and distant future. So I would build upon what we already have and make it even better. Thank you.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Jim. Sorry I didn't see your hand up there. Great. So yeah, Jared, go ahead.
Yeah,
Thanks
so I think just looking back at the Blueprint Denver, you know, one of the things it says is about this kind of strong and authentic neighborhood. And I think it's been echoed by a couple of times, including Cashman, where the identity could really be supported and encouraged in this neighborhood. You've got 4 Mile Historic Park, you know, you've got the history of Denver. I had some friends out from Florida, and they were just in awe of our access to Cherry Creek Trail. I don't know what other neighborhoods have the amount of access that we do to the trail, but figuring out how to capitalize on that and somehow connecting our retail and our businesses to the trail, it kind of feels like the Venn diagram there just isn't overlapped enough. And so if we could figure out a way to bring those two strengths together, I love this idea of like trolleys or somehow moving people back and forth between the cultural centers that do exist. I live on Holly, so there's a couple of little spots along Holly, but it feels like they're kind of worlds away from each other. So figuring out a way to connect kind of those small neighborhood areas. And then I think, the biggest challenge, as it's been said over and over, Evans and Leetsdale. Either they're going to be the two reasons that you don't want to live in the neighborhood, or they could be kind of the things that could really be landmark redevelopments that prove that Denver continues to figure out a way to take, if you think in the 1980s, Celebrity was on Colorado Boulevard, for those of us who were around at that point, right? So you can do big things. And I think if we could do something big with Leetsdale and Evans in 2040, I would love to still be in the neighborhood.
Great. Thanks. Councilwoman Black.
Hi, I was just going to make a comment because I'm so old and I'm a native, but there used to be an incredible music venue on Evans where the Walgreens sits today. It was called the Rainbow Music Hall. I saw U2 there in about 1982, and the Neville's Brothers and Joe Walsh and Jimmy Buffett, and it was awesome. Rosington Collins, Paul Cashman, I'm sure you remember all of those. Anyway, it's a Walgreens today, so that is the sorry state of affairs, but maybe we will get that back. I like the suggestion of a music venue.
That would be a great idea.
That's great. Thanks, Councilwoman. Anyone else have any thoughts that you thought about over the last week or so, or want to react to anything anyone else has brought up, Erica?
I was just going to follow up on Councilwoman Black's comment that we can talk to Chuck Morris about using the name Rainbow too.
Great. I like it. Erica.
Similar to what some of the other folks have said, one thing that kind of sparked in my mind was I'm currently living with my parents while we're doing a renovation of our house. And so I'm in Cherry Creek right now, and we were able to bark to Jazz in the Park at City Park. And that was so lovely. And just to have something like that my family could do. So I was thinking Cherry Creek Trail, maybe we could build some sort of amazing outdoor pavilion with a lawn behind it, kind of San Antonio style with the river. And that could be a really amazing, unique venue idea right along a beautiful natural asset that we have, like Cherry Creek, and draw people to have outdoor music in the summertime. That could be a really wonderful thing.
Yeah, definitely. Just saw San Diego opened a brand new outdoor music venue. They have a bit better year-round weather than we do, but
True.
Yeah, I think that's a great
people sure make use of it when they can in Colorado, and
yeah, definitely.
Who's to say we couldn't use something in the winter too if we got creative?
Yep. Councilwoman Black, did you have more?
I was just going to follow up on what I think that was Erica said. I am having my South by Southeast Festival on the 21st of August in Bible Park. It's from 11 to 7, and we have 7 really awesome, cool bands, a beer garden, food trucks. Scott Robinson is going to be there talking about the NPI. He'll have a booth. It's really fun. We usually have 7,000 to 10,000 people, and it's really, really fun. So it's not a venue, but it is a fun festival in a Southeast Denver park. So everyone should come.
We've been every year. The best thing that has happened to our neighborhood. Good job.
Great. Looking forward to it. Lisa.
In the chat room, Mr. Cashman had noted the amazing improvements that are happening along the Greenway outside of our study group, which is on the other side of Quebec, between Quebec and Iliff. And we're all looking forward to that opening up. I know that there have been some improvements on the plan from Quebec to Holly, most notably the bridge underneath, which has been very nice, but compared to the other area, it's really looking a little old, and it is not only a good commuter connection to downtown, it is just a beautiful waterway and connection to to Garland Park, where we have the kind of duck pond and things like that. So talking about the wonderful amenity that we do have, the incredible access to bike and walking paths in the neighborhood, I would love by 2040 to see the vision that that was done from Quebec South to Isle be incorporated on the north side of the path.
Great, yeah. Anyone else? Jared?
Yeah, I might get flack for this, but I would like us to at least consider Florida's role in kind of connecting the neighborhoods. Part of the reason that Evans and Leetsdale are so bad is that they are the only ways through the neighborhoods. And I know that Place Middle School is right there, and there's all sorts of reasons why not to have Florida go through. But I think anytime that you have only 2 roads that go through this neighborhood, there's inherent kind of congestion and kind of everything kind of bottles up on both sides of the neighborhood, like if you look at the map. So again, I'm sure that there's a lot of reasons why Florida should not go through, but at least asking the question, is there a way to move traffic, both pedestrian, bike, and vehicles through the neighborhood safely?
Yeah, right. It's now's the time to ask the question, so we can take a look at it, and it may not go anywhere, but I think it's good to put it on the table at least. What else? Lupe?
Yeah, just, I mean, I don't think there's anything's really off the table in these conversations. And I agree that there's a definite way of improving the thoroughfare that Florida is. And I think if we're going to suggest something along those lines, it would also be with increased the ability to somehow provide additional kind of bike lane and slowing it down. But I certainly don't believe anything is off the table as it relates to Florida. I also would like to see Holly slow down. But obviously there are developments that are happening on Holly that inevitably are going to slow it down. And I look forward to seeing how those kind of work themselves out in the old post office site. But I think there's opportunities where we don't necessarily have to say no. It's just a matter of how do we bridge the gap.
Yeah, definitely. You're right. Now's the time to put everything on the table. So, and there's we're sort of brainstorming here. There's no wrong answers or no bad suggestions. Dustin, we haven't heard from you yet.
Yeah, so I'll caveat this with I like everything that's been said so far, but I'm probably gonna cop some flack for what I'm gonna say next. So specifically around like housing options, I think right now, especially the map you showed, was really interesting to see the large areas percentage of single family. And I think if you look at population projections and all, that's probably not super sustainable to have these minimum lot sizes, which are quite generous. I mean, I enjoy mine, but mixed use or multi townhouses kind of thing, definitely something that would need to be considered just long term. Not everyone can have a nice big backyard these days. And there was something else, but I think that's a big one. Where's the right places for it? Is it and I think we've mentioned it in the last session as well, kind of the not necessarily apartments or condos, but that townhouse style where it's that in between. I think a good healthy dose of that would not hurt. And if I remember what else I was going to say, oh yeah, environment. And again, I know someone else mentioned that their complex was using a lot of rocks to landscape, but if we are seeing the reservoirs drying up and the lakes and all that getting reduced, then maybe some of the public spaces, instead of being, median strip filled with grass, maybe a xeriscaped alternative that's a bit more water friendly and sustainable for the future. Again, love Bible Park, love Cook Park, but I'm not sure if grass everywhere is an option for Colorado.
Yeah, that's a great point. And great point on the housing as well. If more folks have thoughts on the types of housing they'd like to see over the next 20 years, I'd love to hear that too. Judy, you've had your hand up for a little bit.
Yes, just commenting on the Florida going through. That is, of course, Denver school property, but I would agree that I think that would be a good plan, simply because it would take some of the traffic, a lot of the traffic off of Quebec that's coming from Aurora through. Because that's one of the big issues that we have on Quebec right now. And I think taking advantage of what we have and what is being done right now to provide better access to these areas, like Paul suggested, I think would be a great idea. We are really fortunate to have parks here. I have the city of Chennai Park here, and then we have the creek development and the Cherry Creek Path on the north and the Highline Canal on the east. And these are wonderful areas, and definitely we should be sure that we have good access to all of them.
Yeah, absolutely. Or thoughts, opinions, reactions to anything anyone said? Harvey.
Follow my microphone, that's good. I'd like to comment a little bit. A comment about tree-lined areas and such, and looking at my neighborhood, we already have the tree-lined areas, and it's great to have that in our area. We have a safe and quiet living environment in our area that we certainly, I say quiet, but I don't think we want to change that. One of the comments were, why would someone want to live in this area? What draws them to the area? And that's what draws them to our neighborhood. It's that it is safe, quiet, tree-lined streets. One of the things a negative for the neighborhood is that we're bordered by Quebec, Alameda, and Monaco. And when we talk about access, we don't have easy access to get outside of the neighborhood, whether it's by car, by bike, or even walking. The closest commercial location is in Lowry, and when Lowry was being built, we suggested a walkway, a safe walkway crossing Alameda to get into the new building at Lowry Boulevard 1, and that was turned down. So the only way we can walk there is go back over to Quebec, which is not a real pleasant street to walk on. So access to other parts of the neighborhood, I think, is important. I really like the idea of the Cherry Creek Trail and the bike paths that are in the area being developed to a point where there's a community draw to those areas, some sort of, whether coffee houses or venues or whatever it is, to be able to use those for other things than just the biking and pedestrians. And then another item that I'm concerned about is the safe bike path. Right now, pedestrians and bikes are not mixing well on the bike paths. And if we're going to continue to build bike paths and advertise them as a walking, biking path, we need to figure out how to make them safe for both bikes and pedestrians. And that's where I'm at.
That's all great. Yeah, thanks, Harvey. Lots of good comments in there. Anyone else want to chime in? Some thumbs up there. Maggie.
Hi, I would agree with Harvey about that almost of a combative way of trying to walk along the High Line Canal and other areas and just battling it for over bikes, if you will. And I did want to comment on the options for housing. Would really like to see more affordable housing options. I live in a community that is probably more like a low B or a C class property. And there are a lot of people here living that would are definitely rent burdened and would like living in the area, but they are forced to move out to another area because they can't afford even the rent here. And so there's just no option. I know that there's a community going to be built at where the Baptist church is, but I believe that is at the 80% AMI. So there's not much here that is available for people at the 60% AMI, which would really help a lot of these families that are struggling. So that was my comment. Thank you.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks for bringing that up. And just so everyone's aware, AMI is area median income. So that's a common measure of sort of how affordable properties are, whether it's 80%, 60%, 30%. Those are sort of common thresholds for looking at affordable housing. Councilwoman Sawyer.
Thanks, Scott. Just wanted to jump in and respond to that really quickly because I agree it would be fantastic if we could get, even 60% AMI into some of that redevelopment that's proposed over in that area. However, the Arapahoe County neighbors are actually looking at suing to stop that development from happening if the rezoning is approved, because they don't want even, and I'm speaking in quotes here, that element of people at 80% of AMI living in that area. So I just want to flag that a lot of the issue when it comes to affordable housing like this has to do with people's misconceptions of the kind of people who take advantage of living in affordable housing and what that means and what that looks like. And it's really, it's a struggle. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for mentioning that. That's disappointing to hear that we're getting that kind of feedback from our neighbors. Thanks. Anyone else want to jump in on housing or any other topic? Lisa.
I used to develop multifamily housing and did a lot of multifamily housing revenue bond projects. Mostly they were in Arapahoe County, down by I live in Quebec, so not far from where I live. And a lot of those were the so-called 80-20 program. And I do think that there's a lack of understanding. And what I liked about some of the programs in that time is that they kind of mixed the 80-20 and the 60-40 programs, where you had a mix of the 80% and the 60% kind of living in the same community. I think that is very wise, because I think it encourages. Because 80% of median income is usually up and coming people that just need a little assistance with rent, and sometimes they were a little bit more professionally oriented or had upper paying blue collar jobs, and then the 60% had a little bit lesser kind of lifestyle, but then they got to meet people and mingle with people that were maybe doing a little bit better than they were, and there was connections there. Of people networking and trying to make their lives better. So I'm not sure that I like 80-20 separate from a 60-40 or a 50-50 plan. I kind of like them when they were merged together.
Yeah, I think there's definitely advantages to mixed income developments and mixed income communities. I think that's a great point. Anyone else? We're approaching 8 o'clock here, but still got time for 2 more comments. If anyone has anything else they'd like to share. And if not, this has been a really good discussion. Really appreciate all the thought you've all given to this and the back and forth we've had here. So we'll take all of your input, which was really helpful. Like I said, with the input we're getting from the community through this community engagement, and that upcoming meetings will have more discussions about this as we try to refine this into a vision statement or a set of vision statements to guide the plan. At our next meeting in September, it'll be September 8th. I think we're going to be able to have our equity training that unfortunately we had to reschedule from the July meeting. So that'll probably be most of our September meeting. And then we'll probably pick this up again in October, and at that point try to put together a vision statement based on all the conversation we've had here and the input we've gotten from the community in this kickoff. So with that, thanks everyone for attending tonight and for sticking with this over sort of the long layoff there. Unfortunately, we had to miss a meeting, but we look forward to sort of regular meetings now on the second Wednesday of every month. And so I look forward to seeing you all again in September. If you have any questions or comments or anything in the intervening month, feel free to let us know. If you'd like us to come to your neighborhood or your RNO or your group or wherever and speak about the plan, answer questions, anything like that, let us know. We can get something scheduled. If you're having a block party or an event or anything where we could come and speak to folks about the plan, we'd love to do that. So please let us know if there's anything like that we could attend in the next few weeks. But other than that, if no one has any additional questions or comments right now, we can leave a couple minutes early and let you all enjoy your Wednesday evening. All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a good night.
Good night.
Sorry, Libby, I was just going to wait to see if you responded before I jumped off.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I?
Oh, so I was just asking if you guys have any print assets at all.
Oh,
So I've just had a really bad time connecting with like neighbors by like telling them like, hey, you should do this. And they say yes. And then I get like a text like, hey, what was it? And then I look up. So I was just curious, have you guys printed anything that you hand to people that puts them on the survey or the plan?
yes, we do have some flyers.
Okay. What would be the best way for me to get those?
Okay, well,
The easiest thing is if you can stop by the web building, if you're downtown ever, we can go to you then.
I live in the near southeast. I don't go downtown. I love my.
Right.
if you come, we'll be at Cook Park on Friday.
Right.
Oh.
If you're around Friday, we'll be at 4 Mile between 10 and 2, and at Cook Park between 2:30 and 5. So if you stop by either of those, we can
4
give you a
Mile
stack of flyers.
And Cook Park was what time? 2 to 5?
2:30 to 5.
Okay. 4 Mile is in the 4 Mile Historic Park?
Yeah.
Aforementioned. Thank you guys. Hey, by the way, y'all do a spectacular job listening to people. As somebody who listens to people as a part of my occupation, you all do a spectacular job listening to people. So
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thanks, Jared.
Thanks, guys.
Good job, Scott.
you.
Thanks.
See ya.